Hello everyone, I'm Mr.Graveveil, a horror storyteller. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos like this. Now, let's begin. When you're broke, you develop a taste for the kind of food that only costs a couple bucks and barely passes as edible. I used to joke that I could judge how long someone had been on the road just by what they ordered at a truck stop. Me? I was 2 years into it, and I'd come to enjoy greasy sausages and coffee strong enough to take the rust off chrome. That morning, I stopped at one of those off-ramp diners outside of Vail. Wind was sharp. Snow on the way. Inside, it was all flickering fluorescent lights and formica booths. The kind of place where the heat is always too low and the coffee is always too bitter. I didn't mind. But I couldn't enjoy my plate this time. Not with the man 2 booths down watching me like I owed him money. He wasn't odd in any obvious way. Regular jacket, jeans, mid-40s maybe. But something about him felt wrong. His posture was stiff. He didn't blink much. Just scanned the room like a machine. And in front of him sat a single untouched cup of decaf. I kept my eyes on my food, but the hairs on the back of my neck wouldn't relax. It was only when the waitress brought my check that I looked up again. He was still staring, and then he stood. Without a word, he walked over and sat across from me. "You a trucker?" he asked. His voice was calm, but too flat, like someone imitating a calm person. "Yeah," I said. "Would you allow me to ride with you?" He smiled, and it didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. What, like a hitchhiker? "I've been on the road a long time," he said. "But I'm heading home now. I haven't seen home in years." "You don't even know where I'm headed," he blinked. First time I saw him do that. "You're going over Vail Pass." That got my attention. "Yeah, toward Grand Junction. And from there, Salt Lake." He nodded like he already knew. "You're going exactly where I need to go." I was ready to shut it down, but the waitress returned before I could say no. She leaned in and whispered, "Please. He's been sitting here since last night, watching everyone, watching me. I'll comp your meal, just get him out of here." I hesitated. She was scared, I could tell. And I've never been good at saying no to a woman in trouble. So I sighed and said, "Fine, come on." He didn't thank me, just followed quietly as if we'd agreed hours ago. His steps were light, like he wasn't really touching the ground. We walked through the parking lot under heavy clouds. I opened the passenger side door and motioned for him to get in. He climbed up without hesitation, like he'd been in this truck before. Once I settled behind the wheel, I asked, "What's your name?" He shifted in his seat. "We don't need to know each other's names." I glanced over, raising an eyebrow. "Call me whatever you'd like," he added, as if that made it better. "Jim," I said, grabbing the first name that popped into my head. He nodded. The road out of town was covered in salt and slush. The radio buzzed static, so I turned it off. Snow was starting to fall. Not heavy yet, but thick enough to make the world quieter. After a few minutes, I offered an apology. "Sorry, heat's been acting up. Might get cold back there." Jim didn't seem to hear me, or maybe he did and didn't care. "It'll be nice to get home," he said instead. "It's warmer there." "Where's home exactly?" I asked, just trying to make conversation. "It's not far now," he said. "You're taking me most of the way." I didn't press. Something about his tone made me not want to ask more. He sounded so sure. I kept my eyes on the road, but something felt off in the cab. Not just the presence of a stranger. It was quieter than usual. Too quiet. The snow picked up fast. Visibility dropped to half. Another truck came up behind me with chains on its tires. I wasn't in a rush, so I eased over and pulled into a turnout to let him pass. The driver blinked his hazards in thanks. "What are we doing?" Jim asked. His voice had changed lower now, more direct. "Just letting him go by. Maybe check the weather, see if it's worth chaining up." Jim looked at the windshield like it was lying to him. He said, "All right. I suppose that'll be fine." I didn't like the way he said that. Like I needed permission. I checked the radar on my phone, barely had a signal, but enough. The forecast wasn't good. Storm cells stacked for hours. No way I was climbing that pass in these conditions. I turned to him. Sorry, Jim. Looks like we're stuck for a while. He didn't answer right away. Then, we don't look stuck. It's not safe to keep driving. I'll help you with the chains. I don't push it downhill in snow, man. Not worth it. He looked at me, not angry, just off, but I need to get home. Few hours won't change that. His smile faded. You don't understand. If we don't go now, I might not make it. The way he said it, that if we didn't go now, he might not make it, felt too heavy to ignore. It wasn't begging or panic. It was something closer to resignation, and that made it worse. I told him again that we weren't climbing Vale in a snowstorm. I tried to explain that people have died trying that pass in weather not half as bad as this. He didn't argue, just turned his face toward the window, jaw tight, eyes tracking the falling snow like it had betrayed him personally. You don't understand, he muttered. It's not about the weather. Then what's it about? He didn't answer. Just kept staring out, as if the answer was somewhere out there in the trees. I checked the forecast again, still hours of snow ahead. I turned to him and said, we'll wait this out. As soon as it clears, we move. You'll get where you're going. But he wasn't listening anymore. His hands were clenched on his knees, the muscles in his jaw tight as steel cable. After a moment, he said, I'll help you put the chains on. I'm not going. If we wait, I won't get there. I looked at him, trying to decide if I was dealing with someone scared or someone unstable. He stared back at me with a kind of pressure behind his eyes. Not anger exactly, more like urgency turning into something else. It's a place, Jim, I said. It'll still be there tomorrow. He finally turned his whole body toward me, and the tension in his shoulders had changed. That smile was back, the one that looked like it was painted on by someone who'd never actually felt what it meant. If we miss the window, he said, I don't get to go at all. What are you talking about? I asked, now irritated. You keep saying stuff that doesn't mean anything. You want to go or not? For a second, I thought he'd raise his voice or get angry, but he just looked at me with this expression I couldn't read, like someone trying to remember what empathy is supposed to look like. Then I moved. I unbuckled my seatbelt and leaned toward the glove box, my hand hovering without opening it. I didn't want this to escalate, but I needed him to understand I wasn't playing around. I think it's time for you to get out of my truck. He didn't speak, just stared at the glove box like he already knew what was in there. His posture shifted slightly, but not in fear, more like disappointment. You're making a mistake, he said, voice low. I've made worse, I replied. He watched me a second longer, then reached for the door handle. I almost told him not to, not in this cold, but something held my words back. He paused with the door halfway open, turned his head slightly, and said, You don't understand what's waiting for me. I didn't answer. I just kept watching him. Then he stepped down into the snow, closing the door behind him without another word. He stepped into the snow like it didn't bother him, like the cold wasn't real. I watched from inside, hand still near the glove box, heart beating faster now. I was hoping he'd walk down the road, maybe head back to the diner. But he didn't go anywhere. He just stood there, right beside the cab, holding the jerky I'd forgotten on the dash. Didn't say anything. Didn't move. I waited, thinking maybe he'd realize how bad the cold was and come back to ask for a ride again. That didn't happen. I finally grabbed my coat, stuffed the revolver in my belt just in case, and climbed out into the cold. The wind hit me like a wall. 10, maybe 12 degrees, but it cut deep. I expected to see him a few feet away walking, but he wasn't there. At first I thought maybe he'd ducked behind the trailer or stepped into the trees to take a leak. I looked around the pullout calling, Jim. Once, quietly, more out of habit than concern. The road was empty. The woods were black. That's when I saw the snow, clean, untouched, except for a line of footprints heading away from the truck. But they didn't go far. They stopped after maybe 10 feet, just ended. No sign of turning, running, falling, just stopped. I walked up to them. The last print was sharp, right where a boot had pressed into the snow, and then nothing beyond it. The forest wasn't that far, but there were no drag marks, no prints leading into the trees, no broken brush. Just silence and cold. I waited another minute, still nothing. My brain tried to sort through it. Maybe he'd doubled back and I missed it. Maybe I'd imagined how recent the prints were. Maybe he wasn't right in the head and took off fast into the woods. Maybe, but I knew what I saw. Those prints ended like someone had been lifted straight out of the snow. I turned back, boots crunching over the frozen shoulder, and climbed back into the cab. Locked both doors. Turned the heater up as far as it would go, which wasn't much. My fingers were stiff. I left the revolver on the seat next to me. Sat there staring through the windshield, eyes jumping at every tree branch that moved. I didn't sleep that night. The snow came harder. Wind shook the cab. And somewhere out there in the dark, I felt like someone was still watching. Maybe not Jim. Maybe not anyone at all, but the air had shifted. Like something was waiting for me to fall asleep. I stayed parked until daylight, then I started driving. I made it to Grand Junction by mid-morning. Dropped the trailer, signed the paperwork, and drove straight to a cheap motel on the edge of town. I hadn't slept in over 24 hours. But even with a deadbolt on the door and the heater humming, I couldn't relax. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the prints in the snow. That last one. Sharp, full, final, no follow-up, no explanation, just gone. I told myself 100 versions of the story over the next few days. Maybe he'd faked it somehow, wanted to scare me. Maybe he'd climbed onto the back of the trailer when I wasn't looking. Maybe the storm just erased the rest of the trail. But none of it sat right. I didn't call anyone. Didn't report it. Who would I call? What would I even say? I gave a ride to a strange guy who disappeared without a trace after muttering weird things about going home. That doesn't get you help. That gets you evaluated. I finished the trip and got back to the yard 2 days later. My dispatcher asked how the run went. I told him the roads were rough, weather worse than expected, and left it at that. 2 weeks later, I quit long haul. Took a local route that kept me inside city limits, home every night. Less money, but I didn't care. I didn't want to be alone in the middle of nowhere again. Especially not at night. Especially not with strangers. I still think about him sometimes. Jim, or whatever his real name was. I don't even remember what his voice sounded like anymore. Just the way he looked when he realized I wasn't going to take him where he wanted to go. Not angry. Not even disappointed. Just resigned. Like it wasn't the first time. Some nights, usually when the weather's bad or the roads are empty, I'll catch myself glancing at the passenger seat. Nothing there, of course. But I feel something. A presence that isn't loud, but persistent. Like the echo of a decision I was never supposed to make. I know how this sounds. I know how it looks. I've told no one, and I don't plan to. But if you ever find yourself pulled over in a snowstorm, and someone asks for a ride, tells you they're heading home, and that they need to go now, just ask yourself one thing. Why now? And if you can't find a good answer, maybe keep the door shut. I've been driving trucks for over 15 years. Somewhere along the way, I stopped counting miles and started listening more to the voices bouncing around on the CB. That old rig, radio scratched. Dusty, maybe even older than me, became more than just a tool. It was a companion. Sure, some drivers now use apps, message boards, whatever's on their phones. But the ones who've been doing this a while, they stick with the static and hiss. With the strange codes, the familiar handles, the chatter that drifts through the long, empty nights. And once in a while, something drifts through that you can't shake. That's how I found the frequency, the one I shouldn't have, the one that kept pulling me back. I don't remember when I first caught it. Could have been 3, maybe 4 years ago. I was somewhere outside of Tulsa, flipping through channels half out of boredom, half out of habit. That's when I heard it. It started with a sound like someone chewing. Not casual snacking loud, wet chewing. Then a woman laughing. Too loud, too sharp. Voices murmuring behind it, like a conversation happening in another room, muffled by walls you couldn't see. Then it cut to a voice clear, cold, almost mechanical. Sierra 257, inbound, 4 units northwest. Proverbs 28 verse 1. No call sign, no explanation, no brakes. The voice faded and the channel returned to static. I figured it was just a glitch, some kind of interference. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about the tone, the cadence, the unnatural calm. The next night I found it again, a little earlier this time. I sat parked outside a diner in Missouri, engine idling low, thumb on the CB dial like I was tuning a memory. Same sounds, chewing, laughing, murmuring. The cold voice returned, repeating codes and Bible verses. Except now, I recognized the verse. Micah 7:2, the faithful have been swept from the land. Not one upright person remains. Everyone lies in wait to shed blood. They hunt each other with nets. The chill in my spine had nothing to do with the weather. A week later, I was parked outside a diner off I-70. The kind of place with coffee that tastes like burnt water and booths patched with duct tape. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet stops. They made the world feel smaller. I was nursing a plate of cold fries and bad coffee, half listening to 2 guys arguing over the CB handles like Rocket and Mollusk when the black 571s came up. Don't see what the big deal is, Rocket said. They don't bother nobody, in and out. Like ghosts. That's why they bother me, Mollusk shot back. They're too quiet. No lights, no logos, just matte black. Like they're hiding something. I didn't chime in, but I agreed with Mollusk. I'd seen the trucks. Jet black, reflective chrome wheels. A bold white 571 painted on the side of each trailer. I'd never seen anyone get out of one. I'd never seen anyone drive one in. They just appeared. That night, as I was walking back from the bathroom, I saw a group of women arguing behind the diner. 3 of them. 2 young. 1 older, hard-faced. The younger ones had that look tired but not yet broken. The shorter one had black hair and a faded tattoo of an angel on her calf. The other, taller, wore ripped fishnets and a heavy coat. They were fighting about something. The tattooed girl angel maybe was saying she wouldn't do it. I said I'd do anything but not this. I heard her say, "Not the black trucks." "It's a fucking myth," the blonde snapped. "They pay more, that's all." "Mary," Angel said, grabbing her sleeve. "Please don't." The older woman smacked her, loud, final. Mary walked off toward a newly arrived 571. Angel just stood there, shivering. Her mascara was running. She pulled a flask from her coat and took a long sip, jaw tight. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe it was the way she stared past everything, like she wasn't even here. I went inside, ordered a shake and another plate of fries. And when I heard the bell ring behind me, I didn't even look back. Buy her whatever she wants, I told the guy behind the counter, nodding toward the girl with the angel tattoo. She didn't thank me, just sat, arms crossed, eyes on the door. As I passed her table on the way out, I stopped. "What's your name?" She flinched. I pointed at her calf. "Angel?" She stared for a second, then shrugged. "Can be." That was the last I saw of her for 3 months. For 3 months, I couldn't leave that broadcast alone. Every morning before I even started the engine, I'd hunt for it, flicking through the channels until sometimes I'd hear it again. That disturbing mix of chewing, Laughter, whispers, and that calm, mechanical voice dropping codes and verses. Each broadcast grew stranger. I caught voices murmuring in fragments, a woman reciting psalm verses, a man repeating names like incantations, a chant interrupted by laughter. Once, I thought I heard the echo of metal hitting flesh, muffled cries, a desperate plea. "Help me." I tried asking around at truck stops. Nobody had heard anything like it. A few shrugged and changed the subject. A couple laughed, thought I was pulling their leg. Nobody believed me. Nobody else cared enough to listen. Then I heard this stop mentioned on the broadcast. Just once, a casual mention. "Stop Delta 4, stand by." That was enough. I checked my map. It was only a day's run away. I hadn't planned on it, but I pulled my rig over, checked the weather, then turned it around. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just needed to know what was going on. That evening I pulled into Delta 4, a lonely rest stop, tin-roofed, wind rattling the signs. A handful of rigs, mostly empty. No black 571s yet. I sat for hours listening. Static, voices, verses, then silence. Then again, the mechanical voice. Sierra 257, inbound, 4 units northwest. Luke 6:27. There was no diner, just vending machines and a cold concrete porch. I stepped outside. Town was miles off. No cell reception, no life. Perfect quiet. Then I saw her angel. Same tattoo, same haunted look. Now her shoulders held tension, her eyes too old for her face. I watched as she approached a truck, a black 571, this time parked alone at the far end. She paused at the door, took a shaky breath, then climbed in. I moved toward her, shouting, "Angel!" She didn't look back. Didn't answer. She just walked forward and disappeared inside. Behind her, the rig's door closed with a metal click sharp enough to echo in the empty lot. I froze. I should have yelled, chased her, called for help, but I didn't. The world felt suspended there for a second too long. Then I heard chewing. Behind me. Wet, slow, steady. I spun around. Nobody in sight. Just the dark twin of the 571. When I looked back at the windows, they were dark. Shiny black glass with no sign of life inside. I walked over to the cab. The door was unlocked. I should have stayed back. Behind me, the motor slammed to life as though someone had pulled a key. I froze again. Truck idling, lights on, but no one there. I climbed in the driver's seat, heart pounding. CB lit up suddenly. Chewing continues, laughter, undertone murmurs. And then her voice, soft and weak, "Help." Static ripped the channel apart. The radio died. I slammed the truck into gear and tore down the road without even looking where I was going. I drove aimlessly for hours, not thinking, just moving. I didn't stop until dawn threatened the sky. Then, like a whisper from muscle memory, I pulled into a rest stop I'd used once before. Familiar enough to feel safe, quiet enough to feel hidden. There was a small diner on-site, dim neon flickering above the door. It was the kind of place that smelled of burnt coffee and fried grease, and I welcomed the normalcy. Inside, things seemed off. The booths were filled, every seat taken, but there wasn't a single plate of food. People just sat, silently staring at the windows, waiting. Their faces were pale, slack. No one blinked, no one moved. I walked to the counter. The woman behind it didn't greet me, just poured a cup of coffee before I even asked. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to me. "You're late," she said, her voice flat. "I didn't order anything," I replied, cautious. She looked at me again, harder this time. "You did, you just forgot." Before I could respond, the door creaked open behind me. Footsteps. Light, but fast. Someone brushed past me, and I caught a glimpse of a familiar tattoo, a poorly drawn angel's wing on a bruised calf. Angel. She looked thinner, more brittle. Her cheeks hollowed out, lips cracked, hair pulled into a mess of tangles. She didn't speak, She sat down at the booth nearest the window, hands trembling as she reached for an invisible needle. Nobody else reacted. Not to her, not to me. Then the CB in my truck, still audible through the open door, crackled violently. Sierra 257. New entry confirmed. 4 units inbound. Isaiah 57-20. The people in the diner all turned toward the sound simultaneously. Still expressionless, still silent. I stepped away from the counter. My pulse drummed in my ears. Something about the way they turned, the unity of it, felt rehearsed, like they were puppets being jerked by strings. Angel looked up at me. Her mouth formed a word. Run. I didn't hesitate. The door slammed behind me as I bolted into the lot. The cold hit me like a slap, sharp, biting, real. I sprinted toward my rig, slipping slightly on the gravel. Angel was already there. I didn't see her move. 1 second she was inside. The next she was leaning against the passenger door, panting like she'd just run miles. She banged the door twice, sharp and quick. Open it, I did. She climbed in, slammed the door shut behind her, and threw the bolt lock down in one fluid motion. Her hands were bloody. One sleeve was torn, and beneath it, a set of fresh bite marks ringed her forearm like a morbid bracelet. Drive, she said. Now. I didn't ask questions. My fingers fumbled the key. The engine roared to life. As I threw the rig into gear, I caught a glimpse of the diner in my side mirror. They were coming out. Not running, walking, all of them. Dozens of them, in unison. Blank-faced, some still clutching knives and forks like props in a stage play. They moved with eerie calm, like they had all the time in the world. I didn't wait to see what they wanted. I pulled out fast, the trailer jolting behind me, wheels screaming in protest as we hit the road. We drove in silence for miles. Angel didn't speak. She stared straight ahead, both hands gripping her seat like it was keeping her tethered to this world. I glanced at her more than once, trying to find the words. When I finally asked where she wanted to go, she didn't answer. Just said, anywhere but here. Then she pulled something from her coat pocket. It was a small black box, no markings. She placed it on the dash gently, like it might explode. The moment she did, the CB crackled without me touching the dial. Static first, then the cold woman's voice. Sierra 257, target uncooperative, rerouting, 3 units inbound. Psalm 10-8. Angel stared at the speaker. They know, she whispered. They always know. We didn't talk for another hour. I drove west, anywhere that felt like a way. The sun was behind us now, bleeding out over the road like it couldn't keep up. Angel finally spoke. They promised food, shelter, said the trucks would take us somewhere safe. Her voice was flat, no emotion, like she was reciting facts from a textbook. There were rooms inside, big, cold, not like the inside of a trailer. Like a warehouse, fluorescent lights that never shut off. Cameras everywhere. And the sound god, the sound of metal on bone. I felt sick. They don't want sex. They want fear. Want you starving, cold, desperate. They don't feed you until you beg. They don't touch you until you scream. She held up her arm. The bite marks were swelling, raw and purple. They don't use their hands. Not usually, not at first. She looked at me. There were others, dozens. Some had been there for weeks, maybe longer. One girl kept whispering prayers. Another wouldn't stop laughing. I tried not to sleep. That's when they come. Who? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she opened the black box. Inside was a folded napkin, grease-stained. A Bible verse written in lipstick across it. Micah 7-2. The godly has perished from the earth. I didn't need to read the rest. That same verse had been on the CB days ago. It wasn't random. Angel met my eyes again. Hers were bloodshot, but clear. I escaped. Only because they let me. Why would they let you go? I asked. Her answer came without pause. to deliver a message. We stopped in the early morning. A rest area just outside a state line, far from any major stop. No signs, no lights. Just gravel, vending machines, and a single bathroom that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 80s. Angel didn't want to go inside. She stayed in the cab, curled under my spare jacket, staring at the CB like it might come alive again. I walked out, stretched, tried to breathe. I kept thinking about what she said, about the message, about them letting her go, about what that meant for me. Back in the truck, she finally spoke again. "It's a recruitment drive," she said. "They're not just taking people, they're testing who listens, who follows the voice." She nodded at the CB. "You stayed on the channel, didn't you?" I hesitated. "Yeah." "Then they know you." I felt cold all over. Who are they? Government? Cartel? Cult? She looked at me like I was a child. "It doesn't matter. They're the ones who send the trucks, the ones who built the signals, the ones who feed." I asked her again what the message was. She didn't answer at first, just watched the CB crackle and hiss. Then she turned to me and said, "They're coming west." That was it. No explanation, no warning, just a direction. Then, for the first time, she cried. Not loudly, just silent tears running down her face, smudging the dirt and blood and ash across her skin. I didn't try to comfort her. I didn't know how. Instead, I turned off the CB. And for the first time in weeks, the cab was quiet. We drove until the fuel ran low and the map turned vague. Somewhere in the desert, the roads thinned out. The sky turned a hard, dusty red. Angel hadn't spoken in hours. She just stared ahead, mouth pressed into a tight line, like she was waiting for something. I pulled off into an old RV park, long abandoned. The kind of place forgotten even by the desperate. Half-buried power boxes, empty trailers with shattered windows. No signs of life, which made it perfect. We stayed there for 2 days. No signal, no channel, no 571s. The second night, Angel came to sit beside me. "I need to go," she said. "Go where?" "Anywhere they won't expect." I told her I didn't think that kind of place existed. She nodded. "That's why I have to move. You should too." She handed me the scalpel, clean now, wrapped in a bandage. "For if they find you." I never saw her again. Sometimes I check old trucker forums for her name. Nothing. No sightings. No reports. Sometimes I flip through channels on the CB, wondering if I'll hear that cold woman's voice again. If the codes will return. If the hunger will find me. So far, just static. But sometimes, when I park at a stop and look out across the lot, I'll spot them. In the far corners, in the dark. Matte black paint and the number 571. Faint but always there. The engines never idle. No one ever steps out. And I wonder if they're waiting for me. Or if they're just listening. If you've ever gone through something similar, or know someone who has, leave a comment below. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the stories, and where you're watching from. It really helps. New ones are always on the way. Every week. The next story could be yours.